Yo, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this brand new episode of Hockeytown Rundown. You're here with us, your beautiful hosts, once again, Carlo and Zach, with a beautiful guest, Michael Devellano from Twitter, as we know him from at least, but really much in the realm of this hockey in general. Let's give a round of applause to Michael Devellano, everyone.
Big class for Mikey.
Wow, that's an introduction. I just want to say for the record, I do not work for Twitter.
Yeah.
Correct. He does not work for Twitter. We just know him from Twitter, right? So, well, Michael, why don't you go ahead and take a moment, let everyone know, the viewers, watchers, listeners, who you are, what you're about, what you do, and maybe what you don't do. So, floor is all yours.
What I don't do. I don't know. What do I do? I talk a little bit about hockey, the Red Wings and Edmonton on X/Twitter. I work with the Everett Silvertips it's been a while actually, but as their U.S. scout. So I scout like Minnesota to California. We have upcoming U.S. entry draft on May the 8th and the regular draft on May 7th. And we're part of the Canadian Hockey League and the Western Hockey League. So that's kind of what I've been doing in hockey for a little while. Done a lot of other stuff, but that's what I've been doing for a while. And I have an opinion that I have to always bite my tongue, guys. So you got to tell me to stop.
No, that's just bad content. Let it roll. Roll.
You got to let it roll, Michael. We appreciate
it. Well, I think I always enjoy talking to Red Wings with you guys. I have a bit of a family relationship there, so it's always been, since I was a little kid, like that's the team that I always followed, so we want to see them do well. That's the most important thing.
Yes, sir.
It's been tricky times.
No, I mean, for Red Wings fans, it's been a very interesting time, right? Like how you said before we even started recording, 8-9 years, it's been almost 10 years. Everyone's kind of freaking out. What's going on? Why aren't we in the playoffs and all that? So we're going to go deep right into it. Michael, Carlo, fans, viewers, watchers, listeners alike of the Detroit Red Wings. We're going to be doing, as you saw on the thumbnail, as you clicked on this episode, it's going to be Kenny Holland, kicking the tires, Ken Holland versus none other than the captain, Steve Yzerman. It's not a rap battle. Some people were guessing that it was a rap battle. I hate to break it to them. It is not.
Would be a good one.
Well, with that being said, before we jump into it, we want to stop and say thanks for joining us on this brand new episode. Once again, if you are returning, if you are brand new, thanks for stopping by. If you haven't already, if you are watching or listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and then also make sure that you hit that notification bell that lets you know when these brand new episodes get launched, the shorts. We're going to have plenty with Michael on there as well. And if you guys don't follow Michael on Twitter currently right now, and Michael, I'm not sure exactly where else that you may be on, but make sure you give him a follow too. And where could they follow you at, Michael, real quick?
It's the Pucks and Dreams. And I think there's an underscore at the end. But
and also, you can watch and listen to us on Spotify. Go ahead and rate us the 5 stars. Hit that follow button as well. And then we are also on Apple Podcasts. Do the same thing over there. That really does help us out. Carla's doing a fantastic job on our TikTok account. We are starting to put our shorts also on Instagram. If you guys aren't following us on all of our socials, please do, so that way you guys get all of the entertainment that we're trying to put out there. We think we're putting out great content, right, Carlo?
Never miss a beat. Hey, we always think it's good, but we always like to be humble.
Before we jump into everything, we got a little bit of Red Wings news that we do have to touch on. And so what happened on Friday was that the Red Wings actually announced that they moved on from goalie coach Alex Westland. And let's assume this wasn't to also make the current goaltending situation better with Peter Mrazek and Cam Talbot, but looking at it in the long term, Sebastian Cossa, Trey Augustine, that's got to be more of a directional feed towards that, right? Michael, I'm not sure if you want to touch on that real quick on that decision to move on from Alex Westland, the goalie coach.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know him. So, it's hard for me to say just on the surface. Yeah. I think Cossa was handled properly. So whether that's an organizational or a coaching, I mean, he's done very well. I think when he was drafted, we were all like, what? Why not Wallstead? And he's absolutely jumped over Wallstead. And I don't know what that's all about. But so that, first of all, they made a really good draft decision. And second, I think they've done the right thing with them. Like, they've protected him. And sometimes I think you got to protect goalies and bring them along. So, I don't know what the specifics are of why he was let go. But organizationally, they've done well, I thought. I think that they don't really have anyone else that has that elite capability yet. Maybe Trey Augustine, but that's, a few years behind, right? That's probably like 3 years behind Cossa. So I don't know. Hopefully he gets another job, and hopefully whoever they have in mind bringing him in is going to keep developing, because I thought he's done really well. Like, he did well in the ECHL and he's done well in the AHL. And then they've had a complete caravan of other goalies. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been an up and down roller coaster for sure with the goaltending. I mean, what is your expectation, I guess, real quick for Kosa? Do you expect him to see a specific amount of games? You would have to think with goaltenders being the ages that they are, mid-30s or even high 30s, right? That's probably the route that the Red Wings wanted, is almost kind of like a Casper situation, right? Where one injury, you get that call up and then you're stuck there for good if you could show up.
So I think, I talk to our goalie coach, but my observation is a lot of these young goalies, they try to get them a certain number of starts over time. So it's like, can I accumulate 160 AHL starts and then like 60 NHL starts? That seems to be around the number. And guys are either, you're going to kind of know what you have at that point. Like, is this a goalie that can be a number one? And are they ready? So I think that's kind of what you're looking for. I would have hoped that this year they had started more than one game. Like, did he even start? Did he start a game or did he just get into the middle of a game? I can't remember, but I know
middle game.
Yep. Yeah, so he kind of came in part way. Like, I feel like this would have been the year to get him like 5, 6, 7 starts would have been probably good. Just get his feet wet, and that would have been nice. So I don't know what to expect next year. I would hope that it's like Albert Johansson or Casper, where they pop on and now he gets like 15 to 25 games. And I think that's what you need to do, because you need to start accumulating NHL starts. He's going to have to get used to that difference, because he's getting pretty close to that 160 in the AHL if he isn't already there. So I think that's what you want to do. But he looks like a very promising goalie. Like, I think he's improved dramatically from when he was in our league. Like, you could see even when he played Team Canada, I thought he had he's a big goalie, so he has a lot of kind of holes, in the net. And I think he's done a great job of improving. So keep that going. And I think we've seen Trey Augustine going back, to me, was a weird choice.
Yeah, because touch on that.
He's destroyed NCAA, and then you see him get into big games, or you get World Junior, and he significant drop off, and that sends a little bit of a message to me that's like, maybe he needs to play at a higher level. Like, you're knocking out a 940 save percentage until you're against top competition, and it drops dramatically.
That's a good point.
That kind of concerns me. It's like, get him into the environment with your goalie coach, whether it's ECHL or AHL. I'm sure money has a part of it, because NCAA is paying guys a fair amount now, so that's at least above board, right? Like, so that's a reality. He's a star for them, but I don't know. Like, I would rather see him play 40 AHL or ECHL games at this point. I think that's just me. Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
He's still young.
That's a great point.
No, that's very fair. I mean, we've touched on that, right? And I mean, from our perspective, right, we're only fans. We only watch. We only like things, right? So we're not as
involved
deep
in their decisions.
Right. Yeah. And so for us, the best way we can say it is that the boys simply just wanted to run it back. I mean, even looking at Isaac Howard, he went back too. And we know there's that little tizzy going on with him in Tampa Bay, but that's the best way we could say it. Would you concur with that?
I mean, it's above board now what's going on there, right? Because there's 23% rev share, plus your Scully, plus your nil. So they've got a lot of assets to play with, and not everybody gets the same money. So I saw a chart, and if you look at most universities, they're like the big universities. I think hockey, the average revenue share contribution is about 65 grand. But that the top guys are getting like $500,000 apparently. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know that firsthand. I only know what I've seen, which is, we've had players where they signed a $400,000 scholarship, and then 22% rev share, whatever that percentage is, might be a couple grand a month to go to school. So there's money there, especially if you're like Michigan or Boston, like those programs do very well. They have 20 some odd home games, and then whatever the run is, and they're big brands. And they have other sports that have big money too, right? Like if you look at basketball, the average revenue share contribution is 250 grand from a lot of these schools. That's the average. Wow. And that the top guys are getting more. And now we're seeing football, right? Okay. Football is 150 or 140. So there's some chart. So there's money there. Like, I think that plays into both Isaac Howard and Trey Augustine type players. They're going to incentivize them to stretch it out a little bit longer.
Very interesting.
It might be more than their ELC, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people probably never even considered. I mean, Carlo, I've never even thought about that from that perspective, right? I mean, that's very interesting. And the way you put it, I mean, it opens up our eyes and ears and everything, right? So that's definitely a window that we're exposed to now that we never would have put together without you telling us that. So I thought that was...
I never would have understood it, but there was that lawsuit, and I think they're trying to settle the class action, right? Or not the class action. There was a class action, but there was a antitrust lawsuit by the government, and I think that brought everything above board, right? So they're going to pay out something like $2.8 billion across all sports. Sheesh. Part of it is they're publishing. I'm seeing charts that are explaining the math.
Yeah.
And I don't know the individual situations, obviously, but that you can guess.
Right. To change it over a little bit, let's touch on some other Red Wings prospects, and let's talk about Grand Rapids Griffins a little bit, because they're going to start their playoff streak here pretty soon upcoming. It's actually starting next Thursday on the 29th against Texas. Now, outside of Axel Sandin Palika and Michael Brandt-Nygaard, who are you most excited to see play and why, if you had to pick one?
I mean, those are definitely the two, right? Like, you want to see how they do because everyone wants them to be ready for the NHL, and let's see them at the AHL first. Amadeus, obviously, like, you want to see how he does because you're like, he's very talented, and you hope that translates. So Lombardi. I don't know. Those would probably be the three for me. And then, of course, Nate Danielson. Like, I think he's built for the playoffs. Like, he's a big rig, and, people... I don't know if they realize he had a good rookie year. I mean, he had 39 points in 71 games, and he took a lot of important faceoffs. So I think that he's just a guy that you want to project continuing to make progress. So that's always exciting. And then, I am curious also about both Tuomisto and Buyam. So, you want to see how these guys do. They're the younger guys, and you're hoping that some of those guys pop through as well. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that you brought up Tuomisto because not very many people touch on him anymore. It's almost kind of like he's a lost prospect within the Red Wings system, right? But that's a big right-handed shooting defenseman, right?
Yeah.
That the Red Wings could utilize.
Yeah. Yeah, like 100%. He's 6'5". He's he's not like super thick like Elmer, but he's a big defenseman, and he has decent offensive numbers. Like, I think he might be one of their leading defensive goal scorers or point getters anyway. Let me look here. Yeah, you know what? He had 27 points in 67 games. So only 3 goals, but he's obviously playing in important situations. So that's more than Wallander, that's more than Buyam. So you gotta maybe not write him off. Like, maybe that could be a useful guy.
I'm really eager to see Danielson play in the playoffs, especially after watching Casper and what he's done with the Red Wings. There's been a lot of people. There's been so many people drawing comparisons of Casper Danielson, and whatnot, and I'm really looking to see that Casper dog, quote unquote, in Danielson. So I'm really pumped to watch him in this postseason.
You use the right word too. Like, when he got traded to Portland, and I was talking to like their assistant GM, who's also at most of the events I go to scout. And he was like, I didn't realize, that was his comment, I didn't realize he had that dog in him. It's like, he goes, he puts our team on his back, and he goes, he's so much better than I realized. He goes, he's first of all, he's a very, very good skater. So he has speed. Yeah. He's bigger than you realize. And he's like, he describes situations where he would just take on their other team's top player. He goes, that's my guy. And he said, he just did get the puck. He'll hold the guy to the outside. He'll walk it down the ice. He's just in control. That was kind of what he described, because he's going to be a great captain for someone. Like, that's the other thing he said. So I think you just want that to keep translating. Like, he's going to be totally. I don't know. He's like an intangibles guy. He's good at everything, and he's he's got size and he's got speed. So I think that's exciting. That's good. We all want like a flashy
Swiss Army pocket knife. Yeah, no doubt. The versatility is huge. We talked about that a couple episodes ago. It's just like Casper, for example, he was asked to play the wing on the top line. He did that for whatever, 5, 6, 7 games. No problem. He made it happen. Then he got asked to go in center to Brinkett and Kane, and he did that, and he actually did well. So the fact that Stevie Y is kind of bringing in these guys and looking, I don't know if it's his MO, but he's bringing in guys that are literally Swiss Army knives. Like they can do a little bit of everything when it comes to playing offense, and I think that's really exciting. So,
well, the patterns there from Tampa, right, where you've got Sorella, and that was a kid that didn't even initially get drafted to the OHL, was playing Double-A hockey, and you see did amazing in the playoffs with Oshawa. He was an intangibles guy. He's got more size than you realize. He has more skill, and he's just like he would score big goals. And I think that's very similar to what you're going to get with Danielson. He looks, just when you watch, I always get it mixed up. Sorella or Sorelli?
Sorelli. Anthony Sorelli.
Anthony, yeah, because there was Joe Sorella. Right? I always get it backwards. In the 80s for the New Jersey Devils, the captain of the Devils.
There's a good chance they both eat pasta, Michael, so we're good.
Hey. Yeah, but I think that's what you look at Nate Danielson and you go, oh, there's a lot of similarity there. Yeah, Sorelli. Sorry, Anthony. Yeah. And he had, you look at this year, 27 goals, 59 points for him as their second line setter.
Yeah.
And so you kind of look at the prototype of that versus Nate Danielson. You got to say, there's a lot of similarities. And I think that's what you're hoping for with him.
So real quick, and I'm going to let Carlo go after this. I had one question just actually popped in my head. Who would you see as currently right now one over the other? Is there one over the other in Danielson, Kasper? Who would you project as the 2C of the future for the Detroit Red Wings?
I don't know if it's going to work like that. It's going to be interesting because I think they're going to go for depth of scoring. Like if you look at last year when they had a third line that got a bunch of goals, which was really helpful. They had 3 guys that got 17, 18 goals. That adds up. So if you can get 50 goals from your third line, that's what you want. So I think that, you've kind of hit it on the head, like the versatility there. If you've got Larkin, Kasper, and Danielson, and that's 1, 2, 3 in a couple years, you're really happy.
Yeah.
Because it's how do you contend against that? Like that's really tough to play against. And I think that's kind of what the model is, because they don't have McDavid. They don't have like a superstar down the middle that way. They don't have a Draisaitl. They don't have a McKinnon. So if the model is, hey, we've got 3 guys, we got one guy gets 30, one guy gets 25, one guy gets 20, that adds up. And you just got to get to that 270, 280 goals for as a team. I think that's probably, and then plus they can play 2 ways in a way that they can shut down other guys. So I kind of feel like that's what they're going to build around. It's going to be a little different than the past.
I just thought about this. It would be really nice if we had a Larkin, Kasper, Danielson down the middle, because listen, injuries happen. We've been through it as fans. We've been through it. I mean, everybody's been through it. Whether you're a GM, player, coach, yada, 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 injuries happen. But the nice part about those 3 guys is if that were to happen 2-3 years down the road, you're not over-indexing somebody. Because I feel like Danielson, should everything project well for him, he could, no problem, jump onto the second line and hang there, right?
Totally.
If Kasper were to go down, or if Larkin were to go down, can Kasper jump up to the top line? So not only is he building depth, but he's building that it's like depth within the depth, because those guys can just, it seems like they can really just fill the hole and hang. Whereas right now, you look at it now, it's like, you can tell that these guys are being over-indexed. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big drop-off. Like you saw when Larkin gets hurt, you're in trouble. Like it's a big difference in speed, and there's a big difference in production. But you look at Tampa, who are the centermen? It's like Point. At the top is you got Point, who nobody really like, oh, wait, this guy is great.
Real.
Minnesota traded that pick away, by the way, right? They're like, oh, yeah, you can take him. So that was kind of a draft day thing. You've got Sorelli, and then before you had Gord again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting. Like Kucherov's the star from the wing.
Correct.
Sounds like a Raymond type scenario, right?
Oh, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his production keeps. I mean, if you look at Kucherov, same age, like.
Yeah.
65, 66, 85 points, and then he hit 100.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm not saying that that's going to be Raymond, but it's going in the right direction.
At one point in time, we did do an episode kind of trying to correlate those players with each other, right? So we would do the Sider with the Hedman, and like it was right before these players signed their contracts, right? So you're trying to look at them based on not even just points or just like height and weight and all that, because you can't correlate that stuff. You could, but we're not trying to do that right now. But just based on the track pattern of how Steve Yzerman did it with them and how they played versus how we're seeing Lucas Raymond and Moritz Sider play, we are seeing a correlation there currently right now. And even with their contracts, looking at it now, those contracts that they signed, they're absolute steals with the cap going up. Would you agree with that, Michael?
Totally. And I think that's why people have to look at what he's doing and just kind of compare it to the past. It's not that he's absolutely copying it, but maybe it's consistent, And I think you just want to go, is there upside here? Can I get to somewhere where they're in the playoffs every year and they're a contender? And it's hard to see sometimes, but I think that's what gives you hope, because there's a lot of good pieces there and there's similarities. There's correlation. You can look at Tampa's lineup and go, oh, well, they did it. And it's not like that lineup is much different on paper.
I guess that's the one thing that Steve Yzerman has been missing this whole time too, and that's really no fault to his own, is really that number one pick or top player, and even like a Kucherov, right? At least we haven't seen that yet for the Red Wings prospects currently.
Yeah, but guys are coming through. They're popping through. So
that's an interesting comparison, just talking about Tampa, because I was just checking out, Yzerman took over in Tampa in 2010, just kind of looking at what that team did or what they didn't do with the players that Yzerman inherited. Maybe take a look at that, because it's pretty interesting. Kind of their pathway and what it took, and when they actually started to become the team that they are. Like, it took
interesting, right? And it was not a straight line.
No, it wasn't. It was ups and downs. It was missing playoffs. Yeah. It was winning a few rounds. It was losing in the first round, and then you're winning 3. You know what I mean? Like, it was so up and down. And then 2017 they missed the playoffs. Like,
right. That's what I was going to say. It was a little dip, right?
There was a little dip there. So,
because if you look at 2010 was Brett Connolly.
Yeah,
was their first pick, and Brock Bukamoom, and Radko Gudas, who's still playing, ex-Silvertip. That's great, captain in Anaheim. But then you look the following year, first pick Nemenstikov.
Yeah.
Second pick Kucherov and Nestorov. So I see something, and then Palat.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, that's interesting. there's a noticeable change in the philosophy.
No doubt.
The year after was 2012, and the Detroit pick for the Detroit pick became Vasilevsky.
Don't do it.
So.
Don't do it.
Yeah,
no!
I think we might get into that here as we continue along, Michael, because you did make a mention of that on Twitter too. You commented when we did that teaser, so we will probably touch on that as we continue along. But it's pretty interesting looking at Steve Yzerman's draft history. Even when his time with Tampa Bay, I mean, he even drafted someone like Jonathan Drouin and ended up trading him for Sergachev too, right? So maybe there's a situation where we see that with them currently right now too. Who knows?
Well, I think Drouin, we all see that, there's some challenges there, right? So I think the talent maybe is there, not necessarily, I don't know. He's a talented player and he works really well with McKinnon, but I think it was like, well, wait, this is not a franchise player. Like, that was kind of obvious, and it was hard to get him into the lineup. And so he flipped him and got a great defenseman. Like, that was a great move.
Well, we're gonna find out. We're gonna take a hard look and jump right into it. So the whole thing, like with this episode, like, for 2 decades, Ken Holland kept the Detroit Red Wings on top of the hockey world. He did that, but he did that until he didn't do it anymore. Now we have Steve Yzerman here trying to clean up the mess that was left. He's trying to rebuild that empire, and he's trying to chase down the glory of, let's get the Stanley Cup back to Hockeytown. So we want to take a good look at, I'll open up with the first question that came to my mind was just, let's talk about the basics here in those two folks, management style. And Michael, I'll fire this one over to you. How would you, because you followed the Wings, man, from, obviously you were talking about following them when you were a little guy, right? All the way up until now. And I did too, but I think you were probably a little more involved than I was when I was,
don't know if I was
involved,
a little guy. But
engaged, maybe engaged is the word, but management style. How would you describe Holland's philosophy when he was doing his thing with the Detroit Red Wings compared to Steve Yzerman's? I would say both are conservative. One, I think, is a little way more conservative than the other, but I'm going to fire that one over to you. What's your thoughts on that one?
I don't have a direct relationship with either guys, but
no,
and I've had some interactions. I'll state that
from afar, even just as a fan, like checking it out. As a fan.
I was saying no, my cousin, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the surface, so 97 was the first cup, right? And then 98. And he was the assistant GM in 97 and then GM in 98. So I think really those first two teams had Scotty Bowman and my cousin Jimmy Devellano's fingerprints all over it, right? And they put that together. The Russians were a big part of it. And a part of that story was, I think, the fact that they got late round picks and they were really trusting in late round picks. And I always felt, I don't know what you guys felt, that maybe there was like an under indexing on goalies. And so I think so from those perspectives, I was kind of like, it was like they would consistently trade away from goalies or get like kind of goalies based on price. And I think that was like maybe undervaluing Osgood perhaps. They did get, an older Dominik Hasek and one in 02, I believe was when he was there, right? So there's that. But I always felt that was kind of like an aspect of it. So, and I think that's one thing. The other thing, as we got later into it, I felt like it was just trying to put pieces in, whether it was through, free agents. And they had no problem trading away picks under Ken Holland because he had, some pillar guys there, right? Lidstrom was there, Datsuk, Zetterberg, and it was just trying to keep the band going. And they could compete because of those guys. So I think that was it. And he, no one wanted to rip that Band-Aid off and put them through a true rebuild. So it was really that sacrifice the young, and maybe that was okay because they weren't finding those late picks anymore. I think that was like kind of a little bit of lightning in the bottle, right? Although they got like Franzen and guys like that, so there was a little bit of that. I think there was a lot of trust on the fact that they could get talent late under Ken Holland, and I think there was a lot of, maybe again under indexing on goalies just because we got really great puck possession, we got really great defensemen. And so I think that's one I will say in that. And conservatively, I don't know. It's a good question because he made some splashes or attempted to make some splashes like Stephen Weiss. And I just think that was a case of, that's an example where that just didn't work out. Like he was a good player in Florida, was he, hurt. And I don't know if it was just not understanding what he was, or maybe it was just an injury. But, I think there's just a lot of examples of that where the free agents weren't working out, the draft picks necessarily weren't working out, and at some point you run bare. And so I think the flip side is, if I just do the overarching, we've seen great draft results, real patience in developing players. There's always been that thing where they always put guys in the AHL and try and develop them, but it really wasn't working. You got to have the talent to do it. So I think there's been much better assessment of young talent. And, I don't think there's been any bad free agent signings. It's been very conservative about bringing in pieces that can help and fill in holes while guys get older. So I think those are the contrasts to me. It was like, I think there's been much better assessment of young players. That helps when you're patient to bring them on. I think they were both patient to try to bring guys on, but you got to have the talent to do that. And I just feel like there's an understanding, like you got two stellar goalie prospects coming up and a lot of other pieces. It's not they have a superstar goalie, but I'm not sure that exists anymore, except through the draft. So I don't know. Those are the contrasts to me. It's like one was just trying to keep the band together and keep trying to take cracks at it. And I think you saw in Edmonton that worked, right? Like he said, I have my pillar pieces, and he built around it, and they made a big jump. So that's what Ken Holland seems to be good at. Whereas Stevie's layering in lots of young talent. He's not making a big splash with UFAs, and he's banking on future cap going to those young guys developing. That seems to be the arching philosophy.
It seems to be the case, 100%. And the one thing I'll say too with Steve Yzerman's free agent picks, just real quick, is he brought in these guys because we put out some graphics and stuff like that where we really tried to show who else was available. And there's an even deeper thought of, would they even come to Detroit in 2020? Like, it was not a fun place to play.
No. So
you got to, man. Like, so we put that out there. And what I find impressive that Steve Yzerman's doing, that he's not getting, I don't think he's getting enough credit for it. Maybe he is. He's restocking the cupboard while icing a competitive team that can compete for a wild card spot. I'm not saying they are a wild card team. I'm not saying they're a playoff team, but they're competitive and they're not in the basement. The fact that you are able to restock the cupboard with the players you've restocked it with, while icing a team that will put fans in the stands, will play some meaningful hockey, will keep things, juicy and spicy. To me, that's Yzerman deserves a hell of a lot of credit for that, man.
For sure.
And Michael, real quick, before you go into that, I do have a follow-up question with that. This kind of correlates with that too. Would you say that fans are a little impatient because the general manager's name is Steve Yzerman to that point, because the prospects haven't made the jump yet, or none of them have showcased that they're a superstar? And to that point, a lot of fans are criticizing Steve Yzerman and pro scouting for those free agent players. So would you say that that's the case with some fans?
It's probably a bunch of parts, right? Like, one is the Red Wings jersey, right? You've got this legacy. Two is you got the best arena probably in hockey. So you're like, man, we're going to this beautiful barn. We want to have some success to put in the banners, or banners on the rafters that are from this era, right? So I think there's that. And then I think just the fact that social media and Twitter, everybody has a say, and there's constant attention on it. And this is the ultimate consumable content, right? So there's so much more attention and pressure on it. So I think it's not easy to be patient. Everybody wants to be in the playoffs, including the Red Wings. I guarantee you, conversations there in the summer were like, man, this has been a long time. So I think there's that, and everybody sees teams that maybe leapfrog back and forth, right? So you look at like the comparables and you're like, wow, that team, Montreal or Ottawa, like they've kind of leapt, they've gone over us, right? So I think you have all that into it, and everybody's going to be impatient. We all want success for these guys.
Well, I think you make a good point there. And thank you for bringing up Montreal too, because we have seen a lot of Red Wings fans bring that up, right? Where we're seeing teams, they did a quick rebuild, but let's talk about the Red Wings for a second, right? It wasn't just a rebuild. It was a complete explosion teardown, right, Michael? Yeah. I mean, that's a complete different situation than the Red Wings and Montreal Canadiens. So
I'm trying to think. Okay, so what's the cutoff point? Has it been 5 years now? 6. It's been 6 years.
This would be
right?
6.
Stevie, so,
if we probably should have done this more scientifically, but on the plus side, 2014. Let's take a look here. If we look at the Red Wings drafts, right?
Yep.
And we go back. So the last 6 years goes back to what? 2019?
2019 would be the first draft.
Was the Moritz Seider draft, which was 2019, right? So, the first pick is Seider. What's interesting is Tuomisto, who's in the AHL, was the second pick, which is kind of interesting. Johansson was like the 4th pick. That's a long time to get guys to develop. Yeah. And we're happy, right? We're like, well, these guys are really panning out, but look how much time it took, right? Okay, so we go before that. Zadina looked like Ken Holland's last hope, and I thought that was going to be a really good player. They had a whole
Everyone did, though, Michael.
Yeah, he looked like he was going to be a really good offensive player. So it's easy to go back and say Quinn Hughes. That's probably the big comparable that people would have liked, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the draft. Was that the draft where Kyle Connor was in? Everybody missed on Kyle Connor.
Yep.
Right? Like, he went 20th or something to Winnipeg. Noah Dobson was in that draft. It was a heavy defensive draft, right? Quinn Hughes, Evan Bouchard, Noah Dobson. Rasmus Dahlin was ahead of them, right? And then so you weren't going to get him, but I think that's tough when you look at that. You go, oh man, you could have like an elite defenseman, but you look like you had an elite goal scorer. So that was probably the one that had the most hope and didn't really pan out. And then you look, you have Rasmussen, you have Cholowski, Philip Roenick turned out really good.
Svechnikov,
I thought he was going to be real good. Like, he's a big rig guy, worked really hard, lots of injuries, right? And you even see his brothers kind of got injured. You knew the brother was coming when he was 15, 16. Like, you're like, wow, this other guy's going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
And I don't think we thought they were the same player. And then, Larkin is 2014.
Yep.
So really, if we're being honest, there were some good prospects there. I don't know why they all didn't pan out. Roenick did, obviously. Larkin was like a steal at 15. Mantha, Bertuzzi, like, so it's not like there was a totally empty cupboard. And then you had Janmark in that 2013 draft. So there were definitely guys that, weren't bad at all. So I don't want to completely say there was total. There was some talent there.
Yeah, it wasn't a complete write-off or wash. I think, but I think when you get into the later draft, like if you look at Ken Holland's last six drafts, so I guess you're looking at, what are you looking at? 20.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was saying. Like 2018 is Zadina, Veleno, Berggren, McIsaac, Regula. And so he had depth. He had 2 firsts, he had 2 seconds, and 3 thirds. And then 2017 was Rasmussen, Lindstrom. That's kind of really, those 2 kind of are the most that panned out. And then 16, so that's like what? There's the third one. 16 was Dennis Cholowski, Smith, and Philip Roenick. And Philip Roenick's really turned out. What's interesting is the goalie in that draft was Philip Larson, and he's doing really well in the AHL again. He came back. So that's always curious, because it was like he always had lights out numbers. I think he played NCAA even after they drafted him. And he always had really, really high save percentage. Yeah, he played Denver for 1 year in the USHL. So you go, man, there were some guys there I thought were going to really pan out. I'm just kind of curious what happened. And then you hit on Svechnikov in 2015. And then you had Larkin in 14.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. I mean, you kind of broke it down. You had 2013, Anthony Mantha, 2014, Dylan Larkin, 2015, Svechnikov, who currently is not in the NHL anymore, Dennis Cholowski, 2016, who is, I believe he's still with the New York Islanders, just barely. He's pretty much the seventh defenseman over there.
I was actually surprised. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Michael Rasmussen, anywhere from, third line to fourth line at this point in his career, right? Where we thought he could be a power play guy who could sit in front of the net and do that. And we haven't seen him do that at all. Joe Veleno just traded to Chicago Blackhawks for literally next to nothing for Craig Smith and Peter Mrazek. I mean, some people think that we actually got the worst end of that trade because we took on Peter Mrazek's cap. Then you look at Filip Zadina, another player who's currently no longer in the NHL. I mean, and you look at the games played, you look at the points, then you look below that and you look at someone like Moritz Seider in just 6 seasons. This kid hasn't missed a single NHL game yet. This kid is
been great.
Literally German manufacturing. So this is, a lot of people were nitpicking at this too, Michael. A lot of people are saying, well, a lot of those picks that Holland had, they were middle of the pack picks, and then Yzerman, he had like a lot of, it's harder to miss on those picks. Well, you look at the Phil Zadina pick right there and it's like, well, you missed on that one. So what's the difference here? So let's speak on this, Michael, real quick on this graph. What are you noticing here with the differences between Holland and Yzerman?
Yeah, I mean, we have to be honest that obviously the picks were a little later, and we know that there's tiers, right, in the first round. That always happens, where it's like probably, there's 3 buckets of players usually. Maybe there's one really, really high bucket at the 4th at the top layer sometimes. So I think it's valid. You put yourself in a situation when you're rebuilding to have lower picks. And to your point before, like, it's be a lot better if you had 3 or 4 versus 6 or 9 or 10, right? Because you just miss out on that talent. But they've still done a very good job. Like, I think if we look at this era, the drafting has definitely worked out a lot better. And part of it is being higher in the draft and putting yourself in that situation to do that. And then they've done a really good job of developing guys. And put yourself in the position to have a higher talented pick. The guys you pick, make sure that they have the talent that you want. So I think that's 1, 2 for 2 there. And then 3 is give them the space and the right opportunity to develop. And I think they've done that in the Stevie Yzerman era very, very well. And I think if we're looking at the top, like, Mantha made the NHL. He's still bouncing around. Larkin, obviously the captain, total home run at 15th. I think Mantha was 17th or something. Does that sound right?
He was around there, correct. He was right around there.
20th. So he was 20th, right? So to your point, it's a much later pick. Joe Veleno was late in the first round, right? They had 2 first round picks that year. Svech just, again, he's a little later guy. He had talent and size, but a lot of injuries, like really crazy, like knee injuries, right? Like I think that really held him back a lot. And I don't think we thought he was going to be like a 40 goal guy, but I thought he'd be like a 20 goal guy, 25 maybe his cap,
Yeah.
And then Raz, that's a tough one because he's so big. He had really good hands in junior, and that was always the thing about him, just not a good skater. He's dramatically improved that. And he's reasonable, like 15 goals, 10 goals in 56 games, 13 goals, 11 goals. Like he's like a third line type guy to your point, right? He's a bottom six guy. And ideally that would have been higher. And I think he had injury problems too, right? Like he had some challenges. And I think you just look at what the alternatives were. That's what kind of hurts a little bit because Owen Tippett's right after him. Velarde's right after him. Neckish is right after him. Suzuki's right after him. A little further down, you had Josh Norris and Robert Thomas, Philip Sheedle. So you kind of go, okay, well, there was a lot of talent in that draft, right? So you could have probably made a little better choice maybe, but definitely this era, you got to give the edge to Stevie Yzerman for drafting.
Yeah, and everything's in hindsight too. I mean, and you made it a point, right? Like Filip Zadina, no one was surprised that you took him at number 6, right? He was projected to be a top 3 pick. Even Joe Veleno, talking about him, he was given exceptional status, right, at an early age to play at the age of 15, right? And so the expectation for him was kind of there too, but he fell in the draft too. So
I think you see why though, right? He was big at a young age. So this is kind of the Sean Day thing, right? Where Sean Day was exceptional in the OHL. He was a monster at that age. At 15, he was like 6'3", 230 or something, 220. And Joe was just physically mature at a young age. And Joe can skate, and I think he can complement better players. Just he's going to have a hard time producing offensively at the pro level. But he's an everyday pro, I think. But yeah, so going 30th made sense. Like he wasn't going to be top 10 or anything.
Believe it or not, I was actually very thrilled when we made that pick
at
at number 30. I was like, oh, we got him that late? That's sick.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, so, and then kind of correlating all those players, we've already traded Mantha. The only player on that list right now that's still on the Red Wings currently is none other than our number 1 center, Captain Dylan Larkin, right? But let's imagine all these players panned out, right, Michael? And let's say the Red Wings were still in the situation that they were this season going into the trade deadline, and they were looking to bolster their roster, right? And Carl and I talked about this. The Red Wings, let's say it's right now, right, that they actually didn't pan out. It is exactly the way it is. We don't have the luxury of trading any of these guys, right? But let's say they did pan out. We could have used some of these guys to trade at the deadline to acquire the players like the Dylan Cozens, the Bowen Byrams that people always wanted. So would you say that partial of that is the reason why the Red Wings and Steve Yzerman didn't go out and attack in the trade deadline this season like a lot of fans wanted them to do?
It's a good question.
I mean, at one point, for example, like here's the risk, right? Kasper didn't immediately pop through offensively until after the coaching change. The talk was move him for a guy that got 30 goals in Dylan Cozens. I'd kind of put a video, not trying to be critical of Dylan Cozens, but going like, look at what he actually is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you have traded Kasper for Cozens? Because that was kind of the discussion. And if you made that and it's like, oh, this is going to put us over the top. It kind of put Ottawa over the top. They gave up a lot, right, to do that. But it's not, I don't know, he's not the perfect player, right? Like I think Kasper probably has way more upside just based upon the hockey sense than Dylan Cozens. And that's probably what they assessed, right? It's like, no, I'm not going to sacrifice a guy that improves in short spurts. I'm not going to sacrifice a Nate Danielson who is probably not far off from being as good or better than Cozens. So I think that's probably the choice, right? And just to do it because you're of pressure from social media would not be the right answer.
Yeah, dude, that's 100% what it is.
Yeah, I think that's the fact. I mean, I think if you look at all these guys, you're not giving up on any of them right now. You're like, wow, I'm pretty excited about them. And going back to Seider, that draft, like that's 2019, and we just got Albert Johansson, who was another pick in that draft, and you still have Tuomisto, who's still a prospect. So again, you got to go back and go, okay, well, that's a 6-year process.
That's pretty impressive, though, when you think about it, though, Michael, right? The fact that you're able to keep those prospects within your pipeline for that long and still see continuous progression from them, right? Even the second, later picks and all that, right?
Yeah, and they're still prospects, right? They still have upside. So I think that's realistic, like what they're looking at. I have no idea. Is the organization thinking the same thing? Are they still patient with Stevie Yzerman on that, or they just want playoffs at all costs? I'm not sure the philosophy on that, but if you're being objective and you look at it, you go, man, it's stocked full of layers of talent. And the guys nobody's like flaming out in the sense of, what's the right word? Is that what would they say? Like they're all going to pan out. It looks like, right? They're all making progress. They're all becoming everyday pros.
Yeah.
So none of those picks right now are blown up in your face. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's partially the other thing that a lot of fans are impatient's probably not the word, for lack of a better term. I'll just say impatient is that none of these players currently just came swooping in out of nowhere saying, I want to be that guy, so to say, right? So kind of speak on that too. So I kind of want to ask the question again, is it because fans are just a little impatient because the general manager's name is Steve Yzerman, or is it actually because Steve Yzerman is building something not just for the playoffs, like you mentioned, but something deeper and bigger than that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably all of it. Part of it's just the approach is not splashy. Although, maybe we're short. Like we have Patrick Kane for 2 years. That's been incredible. He made the DeBrincat trade. That's been really good.
Yep.
I mean, those are not bad moves at all. Like they've definitely improved the talent level, and I think he won that DeBrincat trade pretty handily with what they gave up. So I don't know, man. It's hard to say. Like it's hard being patient. Nobody wants to miss the playoffs. You hate to see your rival teams leapfrog you. You don't like to see Ottawa in the playoffs and not Detroit. Like it looked like Detroit was ahead of them last year, and they had to make some moves this year to get over that. So that sometimes works out. They got Ullmark. Right? Like Ullmark, a huge piece. And that's probably what you're looking for them. Like, can they get an Ullmark? Can they get that last little piece? And I think it's like, you're just trying to stack your chips until something clicks totally, right? It's like the young guys are improving and you add layers and layers, and then maybe you make one or two of those deals that puts them over the top. And that's really hard to watch until it happens. Even Raymond getting 80 points, we should be really excited about, because you were like, well, is he going to be a 55 guy? Is he going to be a 55-point guy, or what's he going to be, right?
Yeah, we keep on trying to tell that to people, Michael, is that we know that fans are kind of nervous that if Steve doesn't do anything next season in terms of offseason, like adding a Marner, a Nealers, or a top four defenseman, I'm just throwing out names. Yeah. And this shocks me, fans seem to not believe that these young players like the Kaspers, Edvinsons, the Albert Johanssons can actually help improve this team next season. Do you believe that is something that is realistic that could happen, even if Steve did not do anything in free agency, let's say adding a Marner, top 6 forward or top 4 D-man?
I mean, I think at some point you have to, like I said, add those pieces, right?
Right.
And the question is when. And I mean, no doubt, if you add a Marner on paper, that's going to be a big difference. Is Gavrikov going to push you over the edge? Is that worth the money to tie up, knowing that you have to pay Simon Edvinsson, and you would not want to lose a Simon Edvinsson, right?
No,
right.
So you're like, well, wait, if I can just be patient for 2 more years, I have ASP, I got Edvinsson and Sider as my top 3.
It's pretty gross.
How important is Gavrikov at 7.5 or whatever he ends up getting, right? And is it worth paying him more than, like, what's Sherratt, 4.5, 5, something like that?
Yeah, around there.
So it's definitely an improvement, but he's a number 3, 4, right? You're not getting a number 1 for that money. That could be very expensive.
And that's kind of what we're hearing too, is that he wants to be the number 1 or number 2. So I realistically think that I realistically could see him staying in LA just for that reason, because you look at their back end, I think there's plenty of room for him back there, even with Clark, and then have Doughty eventually moving on.
Man, Doughty looked good last night. I don't know. I watched Doughty. Like, how old is this guy? He's an 80.
I know.
You're like, what? I remember watching him when he was in the OHL, and I was like, He was good.
But to your point, I mean, you got to add those players when you can. But
yeah, that's the thing.
Realistically, I think that we can see these prospects making a jump, and sophomore slumps are a real thing. But is that going to hit every one of those young players that we have on this team? Probably not.
No, I think you just look and you go, all right, they're probably, let's say they pick 12th this year. They're not going to get a guy that's going to step right in. So then you look at the depth and you're like, well, Brandsegg Nygaard, maybe that's a third line winger type guy. Maybe he starts in the AHL, probably. He's already played pro at a certain level in Sweden. He's not that far off. He's a big body, right? Yeah. I don't know if he's got big offensive upside, though. That's kind of the question mark in my mind on him. But then you look at ASP and you go, wow, that could be a really impactful player. That could be someone that,
man, that guy walks.
I don't want to name any names, but you're like, well, that could be a really, really impactful guy in the power play. He's got speed and skill. So I think you just be patient. Don't move any of those guys. You still got Danielson coming. You got ASP. Keep drafting the best guys you can. And at some point, though, they do have to add something. And I think goaltending is a big piece of it. You're banking on Kosa, but you're not going to rush him. So then what are you going to do, right? They're buying time. And there's not number one goalies anymore, really. I feel like, Olmark was up there, and he was a 1A, 1B situation with Swayman. And, Swayman missed the playoffs, right? Now that's more than him, but it definitely worked better when you had two of them. So I don't know. It's tough. I think you just need depth, and you need to bank that Kasper, and Edmondson's going to keep getting better. And then maybe you get Bukal Nikovic, and maybe he's an impactful guy, right? You're just looking for something that pushes you over. And I like bring back Patty Kane, get another couple of veteran guys that can score. Even in Ehlers would be a big improvement offensively up there. That's an impactful guy, right?
Speedy
people
guy.
Talk about Sam Bennett.
Yep. I was on the Bennett train.
Sorry, what was the other one?
No, I was just saying I'm still on the Sam Bennett train just because of the kind of grit that he brings in. Right? I feel like, you look at the Larkin-Raymond line, and it looked like when the Todd father came in, he was really trying a couple different players up there to unleash those two a little bit. And I'm not saying Sam Bennett is a top line guy, but I'm just imagining a guy like Sam Bennett playing with Larkin and Raymond. What could that do for those two?
And before you touch on that, Michael, I do want to say Carlo and I have differing opinions on this, because I look at Bennett's history, even with Calgary, and his, he's had consistent injuries. So I preferably would not like to add a Bennett, but to Carlo's question, go ahead and answer that. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Just the game he plays, man. When all things are going well, injuries aside, the game he brings.
He's a guy you want on your team. He's not young. Is he a 94?
No, 29. He's going to be 20. Yeah, 29 years old.
He's 29. So there you go. So, and his body, to your point, he's never been a real thick guy. So he's kind of a little leaner. But he's got kind of that ratty style. He plays with bite, and he got 25 goals this year. So you go, well, what are you paying for that? And is that taking away time from Kasper? Is it taking away time from Danielson, who could deliver something similar? I don't think I don't know. Do you put him on the wing? Ideally, he's going to play a top six if you're going to pay him what he's going to get paid.
Exactly.
Yeah. But he would help them. He would absolutely help them. But yeah, he's a 96. Oh my God. So yeah, he's that's crazy.
Do you think, though, that he may be a product of what Florida built, though? Because like I said, you look at what he did in Calgary, not exactly quite what he did in Florida.
That was mismanagement, in my opinion, of the asset. Okay. If you look at the coaching situation, my opinion on that was that he was just slotted, and they were never going to let him out of that slot.
Okay.
And I think that as soon as he got out of that, you could oh, wait, no, this guy's a good player. He was a 4th overall draft pick. He can play. He was, he played with McDavid on the Toronto Marlies.
I forgot about that.
Imagine you're playing minor midget in the 1996 group, and you got this 97 guy named Connor McDavid playing up, and on his line mate is Sam Bennett. And then on the second line is Josh Ho-Sang.
Oh, John! Oh my
God! It was a crazy team. That was a crazy team. It was just nuts. Then you're playing in the GTHL final against the Mississauga Rebels, and on the other side is Robbie Fabry.
Yeah.
And those are the two guys. But so anyways, it was like, no, we all knew, like, Sam Bennett's a really good player. He's gritty. Like, how did this go wrong? It doesn't make sense. But
isn't it amazing and how those good players just like people joke around the Sidney Crosby effect. I mean, you see Paul Bissonnette joke about it all the time. He's the reason why I got my paycheck, right? But it's crazy on how that trickle down effects work, right? I mean, you spoke on Josh Hosting. He didn't do anything in the NHL and still got drafted pretty high in the draft. So
those are the risks you take, right? And that's why it's so dicey when you're in those positions as a GM and a scout. You're just like, yeah, this guy looks great playing next to McDavid.
But if you knew Josh, you knew Josh had talent, but he wasn't, there was something missing a little bit.
Even bringing it back to Jonathan Drouin, because Jonathan Drouin played with McKinnon, and I'm assuming that's maybe what Steve Yzerman looked at, picking him at number 3, right?
Well, there was talk in that draft that he was better than McKinnon. And some of that's games, right? It's like gamesmanship, right? And they were a phenomenal junior team. And I think it's one of those things where if you don't sometimes you can't even do extra homework, but if you do extra homework and you talk to them, you got to kind of assess, like, is this, I don't know how you do that. Like, you got to kind of figure out, is this person going to have the habits and the maturity to be successful, as an NHL player. And that's tough. Like, he's got talent. He's very talented. And you see with McKinnon again, he's a useful role, but he just wasn't going to lead a team on his shoulders. And that's kind of what they were hoping for, I think. And he maybe lacked some of the off-ice intangibles that they needed. So that it was hard, like, because you look on paper and he's a really talented player, right? Like, even you watch him, you're like, wow, he's really skilled. And that was Josh Hosang,
Yeah.
Same thing.
I got one more on Sam Bennett. We talked about, his point totals in the regular season, and and I have a question to follow up here. But man, his playoff numbers are good. And one thing,
he's a gamer.
He's a gamer, dude. And that's the one thing. And I guess that's what I'm attracted to in Sam Bennett is obviously the hopes and dreams that the Red Wings are going to make the postseason, which we hope is going to be this coming season, maybe the next season. We're close. But I feel like you bring in a guy like Sam Bennett, he can allow you to have business being there.
Probably.
Playing the game that he plays. That's kind of why I'm attracted to the idea of Sam Bennett. But here's my question. Is it smart or is it reckless for Steve Yzerman to go big game hunting this offseason? Is that a smart move? Or is that a reckless move?
I don't think it's reckless. You don't want to overpay.
Yeah. This is the thing, though. Like, it's the offseason. Everybody's over. Do you guys remember what happened last offseason, July 1?
Yeah, people get emotional or people assess that they're there and that one more piece will be their difference maker, right? And I think you just have to – he seems to be very cold and calculated about, is this really going to do the job or not? And, Sam Bennett's a weird one. Like, if you pay $7 or $8 million for Sam Bennett, is that too much? Because then you've got Edmondson coming, you got Casper, and you got Danielson, and you got these other pieces. Like,
well, and that's kind of part of it too, Michael, is that all these players and their agents, they know the cap is going up. They're not stupid by any means, right? And so they want to take advantage of that.
It's going to be
so they want to take advantage of that. Yeah,
agents are very good at this.
But Carlo, with Bennett, to your point, I think that is someone, because we talked about it too, where we kind of are unsure what the Red Wings' current identity is. Michael, maybe you could tell us what it is, but adding a Bennett, maybe that gives them gives us a little more clarity on what the identity is for this Detroit Red Wings team, because they're not fast. Their 5-on-5 sucks. Their power play is pretty good, but their PK is garbage. So what is the identity, and can Sam Bennett give them one?
I mean, they still have a tradition of wanting to be successful, and it's a good question. Like, I don't think that they have like super, super high-end talent. So they, it used to be the puck possession game. It still kind of is, I don't know. I just feel like they're trying to be a big team that's hard to play against, that plays a 200-foot game, and everybody can contribute in all ends. That kind of feels like what they're going for right now, right? Like, where they just overwhelm you with waves of guys that are just never going to take a shift off, and they'll either be able to beat you with skill or size or a combination of it. That kind of feels like what it is. Like, that may not be sexy, but it's what it is, right?
You're trying to build a competitive team. You're going to try to do that.
He doesn't. I don't think he wants to get in the playoffs. He wants to be in the top of the division, and I think that's what he's trying to figure out. Which is, well, keep stacking your chips, keep developing them, and eventually it's going to pop through. Where every single shift you're facing big, talented guys that can beat you offensively, and if they lose it, they're going to lean on you to get it back. And I feel like that's just kind of his philosophy of what he's doing.
I think that's really well said. And I should have chalked it up to that when I'm trying to explain this to folks, but you're absolutely right in saying, at least what I'm thinking is, he's not trying to build the team to just make the playoffs. He's trying to build the team. Yeah. That's so well said, man. Like, to be on top of the division and stay there. I think that's exactly what he's going for now.
10 years.
I'm sure every 32 teams they're all trying to do that, but easier said than done. Sure. And that's why I asked that question, is it smart or reckless? Like, does it push him back? Because, like, one thing I think that really pushed back this rebuild for Steve Yzerman was Ken Holland's loyalty to veterans. When he was still with Detroit. I mean, Yzerman came in and he had to buy some out, and I think we're still paying Abdelkader, and that's kind of what I'm saying with that loyalty to veterans that Kenny Holland had. So I think Detroit Red Wings rebuild might have gotten, Zach kind of talked about it earlier. Like, he had to tear it down. Like, you can't really tear down and rebuild. Those are two projects alone. So, like, I think it took Stevie Y a year or two. Some would even maybe say 3 to really tear things down before he could get going on the true rebuild.
6. It took him 6 years.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's hard, man. It's like,
it's tough.
Yeah.
It's you hit it on the head. Like, there's more teams. Half the teams don't make the playoffs, right? So if you're middling, you're really middling. Like, you're not making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So literally. And the difference, like, you look at teams that are like 6, 8. Calgary was 12 games above 500 and missed the playoffs.
Yeah, that was nuts. That's a wild one.
So it's not easy. It's tough. And you would have to argue on paper, aside from Dustin Wolf, ex-Everett Silvertip, who we saw a couple weeks ago, why'd they make why we're in that position? I don't think they're ahead of Detroit. Like, on paper, right? They're not ahead of Detroit.
No, not at all.
Scheduling? I mean, there's a lot, I guess, that would tie in.
It's a great goalie. It's a goalie that's like the Sam Bennett in the net that just wills you to win. And that's the way he is, right? So when you say Sam Bennett, there are guys like that will put you over the top just because of, they're so determined and they're going to make a difference in a way that is intangible. That's the type of guy he is. Yeah. And Dustin's like that. I think you're hoping Casper or someone like that makes a big difference there. And I think eventually you're going to get more leadership with Danielson. You'll get more with Casper, and eventually it'll work out. But yeah, it's painful waiting.
Yeah, we talked about that last episode, Carlo. Is there potential for Casper to be a leader in that room eventually? And I actually do think so. Maybe even for Danielson.
For sure. Yeah, Danielson for sure. Like, Danielson has always been noted as being a very, very good leader. Casper, you can just see on the ice, like, the way he plays.
Oh, yeah.
Like, guys like, oh yeah, this guy's making a difference. Okay, I better play better. Or it's like, yeah, let's cheer him on. Like, he's that type of guy where he pops through and he learns in spurts, which is really interesting. Like, I felt like, he just massively improved in a short period of time. What happened? I didn't see that.
Yeah, he's a sponge. That's really encouraging. He's a sponge.
Yeah,
I think that's why Todd likes him a lot.
Oh my God, yeah, he's like,
loves him.
If you're a coach, you're like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah, that's a great student. Well, and it kind of correlates too with what Andrew Kopp said at his press conference. I mean, we talked about it with Let's Go Red Wings Prospects, our last episode, right? If you guys haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out too. But Andrew Kopp said it, like, if you're not a follower, it's going to be hard for this team to do very well. And so Marco Kasper is doing exactly that. So is he kind of leading the group by example of that, being that follower that is somewhat of a leader in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely have qualities in there between. You saw Sider in his press conference, right?
Yeah, him too.
Like, that's a guy that you're like, whoa, people are like, make him captain.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of leadership you're going to get eventually between this group. And I think that's part of the intangibles that they're drafting for. They're obviously assessing guys on the ice, but they're obviously thinking hey, I remember how Zetterberg was. Hey, I remember how Lidstrom was. We want guys with personality like that. And even Stevie Yzerman, right? Like that's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what they're drafting. And that's hard to like put on paper and stats. But you can see that that's the quality of people they brought in, and that's going to eventually work out really well.
There's a good reason why they brought all those people in, the former players, to continue on with the Detroit Red Wings.
Good point.
You know,
top down, man, top down culture. It matters when you're around it. When you're around it, and you can't go anywhere else because they're everywhere. It's either adapt or work your way out, right?
Yep,
but
absolutely.
Let's talk about the cap, boys. So, I asked that question on Sam Bennett. I think he could bring a lot to the Detroit Red Wings when they make the playoffs. And obviously, if he gets signed, let's just throw out this hypothetical. Sam Bennett's on the team next year. He gets signed in the offseason. The Red Wings have a good season. They sneak their way into the postseason. I think Sam Bennett becomes kind of that box checker to will the Detroit Red Wings through the playoffs. Because one thing I'll say is, you look at these wild card teams that sneak into the playoffs these last 2 years, looks pretty dicey for them when they're going up against those top dogs. Although I will say the Montreal-Washington series just got a hell of a lot more interesting.
Oh, yeah, it did.
But I digress. Now, let's turn our attention to Mitch Marner. So that's going to take a lot more of the cap money that we have available. But does Mitch Marner check more boxes? Because it's no secret that the Red Wings penalty kill is brutal. Power play is good. They're 5-on-5, brutal. Mitch Marner, I feel, checks a little bit more boxes than Sam Bennett. Obviously, I think we're all going to be in agreement of that. Do you think it would be wise for Steve Yzerman? And do you think there's even a chance that Marner picks up the phone to potentially hear the idea of what the Red Wings have to offer him? Michael's shaking his head.
I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this because he right now is playing with like two elite superstars, right? Like he's got Austin Matthews. He doesn't have the pressure of center. He can't play center.
Yep.
He's got Nylander. He's got Tavares. And you can say what you want about Tavares. Did he just not have a 35, 80-point season again?
Yeah, he had a big one.
Like the guy just crushed it, and he's doing well and under the radar, right? Without the pressure of the C on his jersey.
Yep.
Still the same player, right? You're like, okay, well, if you look at Detroit, he'd really have to buy into, I'm excited to play with Lucas Raymond. On D, you got to be, maybe that's part of it, which is like, I'm excited to play with Seider. I'm excited to play with Evanson. But they don't have a Nylander. They don't have a Matthews. And they don't even really have a Tavares, do they? I mean, Tavares would have been the leading scorer on their team.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's tough. I have a hard time believing he'll leave Toronto. Why is he leaving Toronto?
Money. I'm looking at it as money. Straight up.
So I don't think it's money. They'll pay him.
You think so?
Why would they not pay him?
I just think somebody else will pay him more or offer him more.
But they can offer another year, right? Isn't there that aspect? Like, don't they have an 8 versus 7 thing? Yeah. And you've got superstar players. I think it boils down to the media and the fans were the ones calling for his head, right? They just, this goes back to what you have in Detroit times 100 in Toronto. And I think I don't understand why he would leave except for that.
I have a good follow-up question to that, Michael. Now, when it comes to players and they go into free agency and they're trying to make that decision, is that primarily what they're looking at? We know that they're human beings first and foremost, right? They have families, they have lives that they have to cater to, right? But is that what players are looking for when they go into free agency, is the opportunity of playing with X and YZ player, or is it more the franchise history? What really plays into it with the players and their decision-making on where they go?
I guess it just depends on the guy, right? Like some guys are going to say, I'm never going to get this payday again. Mm-hmm. And it's an opportunity and they'll go, right, to a team that maybe has less talent. But Marner, man, holy crow, like he's playing with some really special players that you can't get. That's like,
True.
Okay, you're going to give that up to go to Detroit and hope that you can you're really banking on the fact that you can help Lucas Raymond, who is also playing the same side you are. Like, are they both right wingers? Like you look at those, you're like, who's my centerman?
Marner play? I feel like he played both. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if Marner would be a fit in Detroit, to be honest with you. I mean, we all want him, but you bring up
I look at that
like,
specific example and I kind of have some questions, right? Like, I mean, he's a phenomenal talent. He obviously, has gotten attention for being a 200-foot player, which is good. Not a big guy, but he's smart, like super elite hockey IQ, great
ultimate
playmaker. Who's finishing? Like he's got Austin Matthews that can score. If they put him with Nylander, he can score. Tavares can score, right? You don't have necessarily that in Detroit.
I kind of put that on Michael. I kind of put that on Dylan Larkin.
I would put on Larkin to be the finisher.
I said that I would kind of put that on Dylan Larkin. I mean, if there is a situation where you did add a Mitch Marner and you put him on that type line with, let's say it goes Marner, Larkin, then Raymond, right? Left to right, so to say. I could see Dylan Larkin kind of being that finisher, or even Lucas Raymond, because we saw Lucas Raymond put up 30 goals one season, right? And so,
for sure.
Yeah,
but is he a 50, 60 goal guy? Is he a 45 goal guy? Like, that's the question, right?
Exactly.
And does Marner put you over that top? And I think that's the unknown, right?
Yeah.
What Marner knows is what he's got. He's got probably the best goal scorer in the NHL. And then he's got like two other guys, another guy that can carry the puck end to end all he wants and has all the talent in the world, and has shown that he's actually very competitive in the playoffs, which kind of, I think, surprised a lot of people. Don't put him at center, but Nylander can play. He's like very talented, elite talent. And then Tavares, who stepped back from being captain, I think it really helped him, because it's like, what's he done different? No, he's doing the same thing. And he's like big time numbers, so I don't know. That's tough to leave. I really question, would he go to a Detroit? And if not, where else would he go? Would he go to Utah? You're playing with Clayton Keller. Utah. You've got Logan Cooley, but you're in Utah. Does Marner look at that and go, well, they got Dylan Guenther. He could be a 40, 50 goal scorer with me. You could conceivably project that with him. Cooley, super talented. Clayton Keller, super talented. Sergachev on D. Like, they got some parts, right? But still, it's a projection. Like, no matter what, that's a factor. I think who you're playing with and who's the coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, huge.
For sure. And he wants to win.
I mean, those are my two guys. Was Bennett for certain reasons we talked about with the PK, and then Marner just for being that through and through box checker. But I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that go beyond that. But the good news here is that, the reason I asked this question to you is because the Wings have like 22-ish million to spend this offseason to inject. Like they've kind of done this youth movement where they've brought in whatever, let's call them 4 young rookies.
Yep.
I think it's the perfect time for Stevie Y to go and spend, I'm not saying all 22 million, but bring back a guy like Kane and go and get a top 6 forward or a top 4 D-man. I don't think he'll be able to get both. Maybe he can. But I think one of those things need to be addressed and injected and the reason I'm so confident in saying this needs to happen, because you look at the cap the following year, $55, $56 million. Granted, yes, we need to sign some players. It's not going to be like we got $55 million to go and play with. We got to sign some of the RFAs, yada, yada, yada. But the cap, with this cap going up,
it's so crazy.
I think now's the perfect time for Stevie Y to go and start.
What are they projecting
injecting
it after this? So it's going up 9, right? Yeah, 88 million going up to 95, and then 104, and then 113. Wow. Okay. Whoa.
Big money. So that's why I'm saying, like, is now the time for Steve Yzerman to get aggressive? Like, I kind of think it is.
Do it. I mean, listen, I'm not going to complain if you get that type of player. I just want to be realistic, which is never fun. And then you also go, I don't want to lose a Simon Edmondson. I don't want to see a Broberg and Holloway situation, right?
Right. Correct.
That that was, as also an Edmonton Oiler kind of fan, that's painful. And the guy goes and gets 60 points, and you got a top 2 D, and like, man, we need a top 2 D, and we need a top 6 power forward. Oh wait, whoops. That was $6 million. Could have kept them. So I think you want to make sure I think he's probably banking on these young guys, and that's his priority probably. But yeah, I don't know. Is he going to add a $14 million player?
I don't know.
Is that really Steve Yzerman's style? Is that his MO? Because currently the way it's looking, he doesn't want to pay anyone more than what Dylan Larkin makes. And then even on defense, I doubt he wants to pay anyone more than what Moritz Seider makes. So then what's Edvinsson's deal going to look like? I'm assuming it would be under what Moritz Seider makes.
Not much.
I wonder if
but yeah, it'll definitely be a little under, but not much.
Under, and I wonder if he takes a bridge. I do wonder that.
Oh man, I don't know. I think they just try to lock him up for 8. It's like
I would
7.5, 8. Like,
yeah. Just but
lock
knowing
him up
that
7, 8 and move
knowing
on.
the
That's why
cap's
the
going up as a
Gavrikov thing
player
is questionable, right? Like,
yeah,
are you going to pay Gavrikov 7.5, and then you got to pay him 7.5, and it might not be enough. I think right now, if they're Schmidt, they sign him like right now at 7.5. Because you're like, no, he's gonna be fine. He's a good player already. Maybe he only ends up being a 30, 40 point defenseman. Do we care? He's 6'7". He skates like a gazelle, and he's really, really good. And you go, I'd rather have that than Gavrikov if that's the choice.
I mean, I honestly started looking at Gavrikov and just putting him on the top line with Moritz Seider and putting Edvinsson with ASP, and then having Ben Sherratt and Eljo take care of that third
and
line.
Who says ASP is ready?
This is all very wishful, very optimistic.
It is, yeah.
Glass
We're all
half
like,
full.
We want magic. We want Lane Hudson magic. We want.
Yeah.
Oh, this little guy stepped in at 20, but that's never been their way, I guess.
Yeah. So we laid down some ground here on discussing some things on obviously the Holland versus Yzerman thing. You know, my thing with Kenny Holland, he comes in whatever 97 to take on for 98. You know, he swept the floor quite well, and he kept the place pretty clean when he took over.
Yeah.
Some things that were a little questionable. Like I said, I felt that he really was loyal to the veteran players, and he, you know, maybe made some questionable extensions or signings, free agent moves, trades, or whatever. Well, he definitely made some questionable trades, giving away picks and stuff like that. Because I truly feel that it did handcuff Stevie Y. A lot of people online are like,
totally.
You got to get over this. Steve Yzerman just sucks at his job. It's like, well, think a little deeper, man, because you got to look at everything.
I definitely don't think he sucks at it. I think he's been very thoughtful and careful and methodical, and you know that's not always fun as a fan. But you got
to understand it, or like.
I mean, why is Ottawa suddenly in the playoffs and they were out last year? Like, it's so now you're at that cusp, right? But then you see them up against Toronto and what's going on.
Well, yeah, they're being manhandled out there, and that's kind of what Steve Yzerman's. He does not want to run into that. 'Cause I think that's honestly more embarrassing. Like, let's go and rebuild, make the playoffs, and get ransacked in 4 games. Like, that's embarrassing, man.
Yeah, and you look on paper and you're like, oh, I love Brady Tkachuk, I love Tim Stützle, I love Jake Sanderson. I mean, they're young. Oh, they got Allmark. Allmark's getting outplayed by Stollers, right? Like, so it's not easy. It's definitely they're in a tough spot.
Yeah,
it's interesting, but I think,
you know,
it's close.
The other thing too is, you know, you talk about these teams that are leapfrogging Detroit and Ottawa and Montreal. Like, they had desirable players in that age group that were wanted by other teams. Detroit had 0.
Goes back
like,
to
that's how empty
earlier.
the cupboard was.
For sure.
Like, we had no desirable tradable. Nothing. We had nothing.
No, he made an early decision on Mantha, right? Zadina had whatever off-ice problems that impacted that, but the talent was there. He horse traded Nick Leddy in that pick a few times. You know, so if you go back and you look at the deals, like he was aggressive within a pocket, and it. You know, he always seems to be, you know, even, okay, here's a really weird one. Is last year, you get Andrew Gibson, makes Team Canada, looks like he's like stud in the OHL, trades him. You're like, what?
Yep.
But then look at the guy he got, just crushed it at the World Juniors. He got a 6'2" goal-scoring winger. You're like, oh, that guy could be really useful, right? Like, we're not even talking about him.
Yep.
So Nisimaki, all of a sudden, like, oh, so it's like he's still... He'll be aggressive in certain pockets. I don't think he's going to go $14 million player, though. I'd be shocked. And I just don't know if that'll change things much. That could really also backfire. Imagine you miss the playoffs with Marner.
Yeah, no, 100%. Then that's obviously that's tough to look in the mirror.
I don't think he would.
On that one for sure.
And then the thing about Marner too is he's not going away, right? Like if you get him, he's still in prime. Like it's not like he's getting a retirement contract. So that is potential.
Honestly,
but 14,
the other move, if you're not going to make this, it's a lot of dough, 14 mil, and that's obviously going super, super aggressive. But the other thing that Stevie Y could be doing here is going after just simply improving. Okay, so maybe he doesn't get a top 3 player, but he goes and gets a top 6, and he really rounds out the bottom
like
6.
an Ehlers to me would be very helpful.
Yeah, totally.
Like
and then you make that
there's a guy
bottom
who can
6
play
a little
top
bit better.
6. Yeah, and he could, he's a real smooth operator, and he's got offensive chops. Had some injury issues here and there, but a very talented player, and that the pressure's not all on him, and suddenly that makes your top 6 that much better. Like,
yeah,
that could help, right?
Round out your bottom 6, maybe your 4th line, and grab a D-man to make that a little more solid, and that alone could be getting you into the wild card spot right there.
I think in the scheme of things, it feels like the 3rd line and that Tarasenko was a miss, but it's not going to destroy them, right? The money is not insane.
Yeah,
and maybe he bounces back. Like, I don't think anybody thought he would go from 23 goals to 11.
Right.
That was kind of crummy, but it's a $4 million-ish contract. So you're like, okay. But if you go 14 on someone, they get hurt or it doesn't put you over the top. But I think Marner would put them over the top, to be honest with you. Like, I think that's a pretty impactful level of talent.
Yeah.
But realistically, I don't know. Where else does he go? Is that the type of guy Vegas goes after?
Probably.
Right? Like, Vegas is the home run hitter. Like, yep, we're going for it. What do you want?
Don't speak that into existence, Michael. Please do not.
The type of team that can do it, right? They're like, we're going to figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We're going to put him on Jack Eichel's wing.
Oh, my God. Game over. Every game.
Yeah, right.
That's the most used team in NHL for sure.
Like, all right, whatever.
Marner.
Well, I think there's still good days ahead. We all hope that something pops through that's more exciting, and we want to see them successful again. It's frustrating not. And I got to be honest, sometimes I don't watch the games anymore. Like, you kind of like, I can't handle it.
Tough.
It's kind of like my expectation is being outstripped by the performance.
I mean, we talk about it, Michael. Sometimes we'll just have it on in the background just for noise, and then if there's a goal, we're like, "Oh shoot, there's a goal!"
Yeah,
I know.
Especially towards the end of the season, it was tough to watch.
It was tough.
Games.
I kind of want to transition to that now, Michael, that you brought up the coaching, because we talked about it a little bit before where we brought up Blashill, and it's not to say that Yzerman made a mistake keeping Blashill, but someone made it apparent that, and commenting on our Twitter post, that is there potential that Blashill may have stained a little bit of some of the current players still on this team, maybe some of the prospects at all, and then kind of pushing it over to Derek Lalonde? Did he may have stained some of the prospects or even players on this team currently? And are we kind of seeing a shift with that with Derek Lalonde or Tom McClellan? Sorry.
Yeah, I think Derek.
I don't think so. I mean, first of all, like we had a ex-Silvertip on the bench in Jay Verade. I really like Jay. Jay's a very smart hockey person, and I think knowing him and the feedback I got, I don't think Derek Lalonde was a bad coach. Now, that being said, when you're in that type of leadership position, you react or perform in a different way, right? So if it's your first gig, the pressure's on you. Sometimes maybe you stereotype players and you don't get the most out of them. Or maybe you get stuck in patterns. It's like, no, we just got to make this work, right? So there's some of that sometimes. And especially as time goes on, that can be hard. So I don't think it's that they ruined anybody, and I don't think they hurt anybody. And I think that you saw when Todd came through, he tried to take some shackles off for a reason. You probably had a Derek Lalonde trying to figure out the goals against issue. That's probably what it was, right? Scored a lot more goals last year. It was a lot more fun. Lost 75 goals with off-season maneuvers or non-maneuvers, and said, hey, we're going to replace with the young guys, but you got to play the young guys to do that. And I don't think that was happening.
Correct.
So I think when Todd came in, you said it before, he shuffled guys around. He gave Joe Veleno a chance. He gave Berggren a chance. He was moving guys and seeing what they could do. And honestly, that's when they were doing really well.
Yep.
And then maybe going back to it, did he make decisions on guys, and that's when things stop working? That's very possible. Right? Like it's a high pressure job, and you're making decisions of, personnel and systems and all those things. And, sometimes that pressure prevents you from being creative or recognizing why you have success. And that's why you get really, really good coaches in the NHL. And then you get like a couple guys that are really, really elite. And it just, maybe that's the difference, Because when it seemed like when there was experiments going on, things were working really well.
Yeah. And then
and that
said something very
interesting. And I think when the beginning of the year, they felt tight, It just felt like a really tight environment from the outside anyway. Yeah. So you just wonder. And I don't think they wrecked anybody. I don't think they made it so guys are not going to have good careers. Like, I just don't see that. I think there's really good hockey people that are on that bench. And Jeff Blashill came into a tough situation where he inherited the remnants of an elite program, and he talks like like a very serious young man, and he's got the legacy of like, oh, who's your mentor? Mike Babcock. So he's like leaning on Mike Babcock and Mike Babcock's a very smart hockey person, right? Like for whatever, not everybody likes Mike Babcock's personality. And I think, there's some challenges there that he caused for himself probably, but
but you can't take his IQ. Yeah, dude, that guy's a mastermind.
Really smart, like really, really, really brilliant hockey mind. You can see when he did commentary, you're like, he knows what's going on, right? So I think the point is, I don't think they wrecked anybody. I don't think Jeff Blashill hurt anybody. I think even Lalonde, I think Lalonde in some way did a really good job, but it was just time for a change. And you can even see Todd McClellan. It's not like he's been in various places and had various success, right? Like he's been in Edmonton, he's been in LA.
He's got experience, man. Lots of experience.
He's coached
some big time names, right?
But also guys get into patterns too, right? So maybe he's the guy that comes in, he opens things up, relaxes guys, and then it goes back another way. I don't know that firsthand. So we just got to wait and see. I think they're all really good coaches. I don't think they're wrecking players. I think that the guys are being given opportunity, and sometimes if they're not being given opportunity, then that does stagnate them. But some of that is like, hey man, you got to be able to perform no matter what. And look at you go to a guy like Casper. It's like, oh, he's performing. Guess what? He's going to keep playing. Who's that cost? Berggren. And then you put Casper in all those situations. He's excelling. You're like, that's the guy.
I personally think Berggren playing at the level he played at on the top line the last couple games just truly exposed how weak Detroit's bottom six is.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's why I say I think the difference we're all thinking like a Marner. I almost feel it's like the third line. Because if you look at last year again, you didn't replace Sprong, Fabry. You lost Perron, right? Right there is 51 or 54 goals. It's 18, 36, 53 goals from your third line essentially. And they can flex up and down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. So I think almost that might put you over the top.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to before. It's like if the third line, fourth line gets looked at, it could be the game. So Jonathan Berggren, he's not on the top line. Who you fire somebody else up there. I think they even tried Craig Smith up there, but what is Berggren or Soda going to do with a guy like Tyler Mott and Austin Watson on the fourth line?
No, nothing.
What is Berggren or Soda going to do with JT Compher and Michael Rasmussen or Tarasenko even? Tarasenko really kind of that hurts. That one I think
Tarasenko's a weird one. I think he's just he's got a lot of miles on him, a lot of playoff miles too. You know, with the Florida the prior season, you don't know how he came out of that with injuries and stuff. That's a short turnaround sometimes for injuries.
Quick question on that. Talking about the prospects and then even the bottom six, a lot of people say, I don't want someone like a Nate Danielson to be the 4C. I don't want Carter Mazur to start out at the fourth line wing, right? What is your perspective on younger players playing in a bottom six role? I mean, we kind of saw Marco Kasper do that when he did get his call up and he had to earn his placement into that top six, right? So is that kind of...
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's hard, earn and be given opportunity. That's why I say, when it seemed like there was more of an experimental mindset, I think might be better served with that, where you're like moving guys in and out. They have some success. Maybe they falter. You pull them back. You put them back in, right? You give them opportunity. And I think you see that with expansion drafts, for example, right? Where you got, look at Sam Bennett, not an expansion draft, traded, totally goes from being an 8-goal guy suddenly to 28. You look at Jared McCann, gets into a situation where he's playing and he can produce. You look at Michael Bunting and you're like, this guy was in the AHL, got a shot in Phoenix. People keep flipping him, but the guy's a 20-goal scorer in the NHL.
Yeah.
So I think that there's some of that. Like, I don't think you can just peg a guy. I think that's the key. You can't peg him as a third or fourth line if you want him to be a second and a first. You have to give him opportunities and cycle in and out, which is really hard in the NHL.
Yeah.
Right? The NHL is the pinnacle of the pinnacle, and every night's competitive. But that's why it's like tough, for a coach. It's like, that in the moment feels risky giving that guy that opportunity. And then who's going to be pissed off that I gave him that opportunity over the other guy? There's a lot of dynamics, right?
There is, but you look at the dynamics of the Red Wings center depth right now. Now's the perfect time to do something like that.
Put Danielson in, make him the third liner.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll hurt you.
Was JT Compher going to get upset? Be upset, buddy. You're not doing anything.
Yeah, no, and I think that's always been JT's problem is he's not a second line and he doesn't perform great as a third line.
No.
Right? So he's a weird tween situation where if you talk to the coaches, the comment that Jay had said in the summer was, oh, he's a pro. That's what he said. He goes, he's a pro. Because what do you think of Compher? He goes, he's a pro. So he does the right things off the ice, right? He's good in the room. He's not untalented. But then, if you're the GM and you're looking at it, you're going, I'm not getting what I need out of that. And maybe coaches too, right? They're like, man, he's like 12, 15 goals, or it's just, you're not consistently getting the performance. So I think you bite the bullet, you keep giving Casper opportunity, keep giving Danielson opportunity and get them in there. Because now's the time for that.
I think that's why I'm so excited for Danielson's postseason, because if he really can take that step, I would really like to see him come in to the Red Wings roster and potentially go and take JT Compher's spot.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about that. Is there potentially a situation where if Nate Danielson does have a hot playoffs, right? Let's say he's a point per game or maybe just a little under or even above that, right? If he or even Carter Mazur, Amadeus Lombardi, if someone has really good playoffs and even training camp, do you see a situation where they have to force Steve Yzerman to move on from someone either like Andrew Kopp or JT Compher, because you're looking at them kind of like how you said, they're both essentially the 3C at this point. So what's the situation there in your mind if something like that happens?
What's this pattern been? I think he sent Casper back to the AHL initially this year, right? And you're like, wait, that guy should have been on the team.
Yeah, exactly.
For opening night. Yeah.
So I think it goes back to opportunity, and contracts play a little bit of this and history. So it's like that you might see a Danielson go back to the AHL, even though he looks like he's better. And then it's to your point, you're waiting for the opportunity of someone getting hurt or not performing, and they pull him up, right? So that's the way that environment seems to be in Detroit. I don't know. I would put him in.
I know.
I'm excited by him. He's a really interesting player. He's like, no, just put him. Even Carter Mazur is better than I thought. I thought, he looks like he might be able to play in the NHL. Lombardi's curious, right?
I mean, with Carter Mazur, it just comes down to him. It's just the injury, right? We just got to make sure that Carlo says it all the time. He's got to pack on size or else he's going to get dummied out there.
Yeah.
Dude, that play that he got injured on is going to happen 13 times
all the
per
time.
game. Like, you need to figure that out.
Yeah. But he's better than I thought he was, and he's got a little more jam, but yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like they're going to, no matter what, this is why I think it's highly probable you get ASP back in the AHL and you might even have Danielson back in the AHL.
Yeah.
That might be inevitable, right? Doesn't mean they finish there, but I think they don't seem to be riverboat gamblers where they're pushing guys in. They want guys to steal opportunity. And
yeah, absolutely.
If it's
that's why I think they might spend some money this offseason.
Maybe,
but it's kind of like how Michael said. It's they're not conservative, but
they are a little bit.
Whatever other word you can think of from that, right? It's they're not gambling, but they're being more.
They don't want to sacrifice assets for that at this point, and
right.
But you're getting to the point where something's got to pop. Like you can't perennially have this team outside of the playoffs.
Exactly.
You want them to be a contender for the top. So how do you get them over? You got to probably make a splash. Like back in the day, the Red Wings had Brendan Shanahan. They didn't draft Brendan Shanahan. You know, they went all in and they tried to get Jimmy Carson. Right? Like there was big deals. They brought in Rafalski. They brought in guys.
Yep.
Yes, there were draft assets for sure. They built through the draft for sure. They went and got Dominic Hasek. They got
at
Burnett.
1.2, Michael.
Well,
sorry to cut you off there.
Isn't that crazy story? That's like, no, get him. Like that would have been great. That would have been so awesome.
Because of his dad.
It's tough. You look at Montreal and you go, man, they got Demidov and they got Hudson and all guys like Caulfield. There's a lot of parallels there, right? Suzuki's Larkin. You go Caulfield is DeBrincat. They don't have a Sider. Maybe ASP becomes a Hudson, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so you go, man, it's so close. It's not like they have great goaltending.
Yep.
So you're like, well, what's missing? Like, there's little pieces that are working here. It's not far off. It's can you just get a Demidov type? Can Bukelnokovic or however you pronounce it come in and do some damage? You know,
look at the Holland stuff, and then looking at what Steve Yzerman kind of inherited and what he's trying to do to spin the wheels out of this. But let's ask the question that kind of wraps up the theme of the episode, which is Holland versus Yzerman. You know, let's take a look at, and you know, everybody pipe in here. Let's keep each other honest here. But you know, Yzerman came in with a Hall of Fame core, pretty much already assembled.
Oh, you mean Holland?
Sorry, Holland. Holland came in with the Hall of Fame. Sorry, I don't know what I think I said. Sure. Steve Yzerman. Steve Yzerman was part of that core.
Damn, yeah, he was.
The coach was there. The coach was there. You know, and then I'll stop there and just look at what Yzerman came into, and the coach who was there was Jeff Blashill. So I mean, Ken Holland came into something that you had to do like crazy things to mess up.
Absolutely, for sure.
Like,
and I think that's what Steve's trying to build is those pillars, right? He's trying to get a situation where it's hard to mess it up forever. It's like where you get a 10, 12-year run, because that's what Red Wings had 97, 98, 2002, 2007?
2008.
8.
And then finals in 2009, too.
And Pittsburgh, right? So you're... Yeah. Is it Pittsburgh? Yeah.
Yep. Pittsburgh back-to-back. So, I mean, I'm asking Holland versus Yzerman, what's the answer? And I'll be honest with you, knowing all this and kind of understanding that, you know, what Holland took in, what he inherited, the coach that came through or that was already there versus looking exactly in the same scope of what Yzerman inherited, the coach that was here, and what he didn't have. I got to give the edge to Stevie Yzerman, man.
Of course, I totally do too. I think you got the right GM. It's not like he's done a poor job. You want to see a breakthrough though at some point, or it runs out, right?
That's where I think
somebody will get
to be in the next two.
Like dummy me could walk in and take that. You go, okay, well I can make 3 moves and we're in. And it's like, that guy spent 7 years building the foundation.
Yeah.
I mean, some could even say, and I'm sorry. Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut you guys off, but some could even say that's kind of what happened with Steve Yzerman when he left Tampa Bay. They instantly won a Stanley Cup. That next general manager, he didn't build that team. Steve Yzerman did, technically.
Well, Brisebois was there. Julian Brisebois was on everybody's list to be GM, and they kept him.
Brisebois didn't build the empire. That was all Yzerman. Just like Holland didn't build the empire.
Maybe.
It was.
I think it was part of it. Brisebois was there with Yzerman, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So he was part of that management core. And I think Pat Verbeek was probably part of that. And I think Stacey Roosts is in there. And so, you know, they seem to have that in Detroit, right? Where there's like that Maltby's in there and the development guys are in there, like Horkoff.
Yeah.
They do have a pretty tight decision group that they trust. And I think you're seeing that same thing. So I don't know. I think you got the right GM, but there's risk for him professionally, right? If he does not, someone above him is probably at the point where fans are, where they're like, okay, we got to be in. And I don't know if that's now or when that is, but it's getting pretty close. So I think as good as a job as he's done, he's probably smart enough to understand that. It's like, got to get over the hump.
Yep, and that's where I'm thinking, like you said it, he's got to make a move, or the team needs to make an advancement, and I think it's I think now's the perfect time. And looking at the way the team is structured constructionally with Comfer and Kopp, over 50% of their contract is now in the past.
Yeah,
the money's going up $9 million. Dude, now is the perfect window for them to make that one or two moves to inject with their youth. No, it's not, of course not.
It's not going to get cheaper.
Nothing gets cheaper.
It's going to get crazy, actually, probably. Like, so maybe,
There's so many different outcomes that could happen in the next two off seasons that really make me think that when we ask this question again, Holland versus Yzerman, like I think everyone's probably, I don't know if I should say everybody, but I think folks that are thinking hard, thinking deep about what Yzerman's inherited, I feel like they're probably going to give Stevie Y the edge when you draw that comparison of Holland versus Yzerman. They really should. But you ask that again in a few more years, I think it's going to be like a unanimous Stevie Yzerman, because if he's put himself into a position this year and next year that there are so many different outcomes that could happen, whether it's going for the big fish or it's rounding out the middle six, or making the bottom six a little bit better and addressing the defense, or it's doing all three plus getting a really sick goalie if Kosa's for some strange reason not ready to come up, which I think he's going to be close. Like he's going to probably get 15 games.
He'll still need some time, but my gut tells me that they showed last year how you could do it, right? I think they've improved by adding Casper in the top six. So they still have a hole on the left wing there on that top line, probably.
Yep.
So you go, okay, fill that. If you do something less expensive like an Ehlers, and you might still overpay, but it's not 15 million.
Yeah.
He's going to fill at least 65, 75 games, depending on his injury history, right? Yeah. You don't think he's going to necessarily I don't know if he played all games this year, did he? I have to check. But, there's a guy that can get 28 goals, and then you fill in the middles, like the third line. Because if you can get back to having three guys that get 15 goals, and you get 45 goals from that group, you're now back up to that 270, 280 goals for, and they already improved the goals against a little bit. You might be in the playoffs.
Could be.
Right? That's how
the kids are still going, developing.
All the kids
this is before Danielson, and you know what I mean? This is before those guys.
Yeah. So I feel like that's more realistic as to what he's going to do.
This will be the final question for me. Okay. There are a lot of fans, and I don't want to say all, but I think that there are a lot of fans calling for Steve Yzerman's head. Maybe they're not Red Wings fans and they're just trolling us. Who knows? I really can't tell anymore at this point, but there are a lot of fans calling for Steve Yzerman's head right now. Would you say it would be a mistake if they moved on from Steve Yzerman being the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings?
Yeah, like who are you going to put in there is legitimately the question, right? Imagine they brought back Ken Holland.
But yeah, who would you even replace Steve Yzerman with, Michael? I mean, but to go back to the question, would it be a mistake if you moved on from Steve Yzerman?
I honestly think he's at the point where they're going to decide, just because it's like, and maybe it's not the beginning of the season, maybe it's the end. I don't know. I don't know anything firsthand. But you're entering a point where like, well, we got to have someone that can push us over the hump. We should be a playoff team. And you saw that I'll use the example of Carolina, where Ron Francis could never get him over the hump. And that's kind of happened again in Seattle. And what happens is you bring in, Don Waddell and now Eric Talusti, and they're in the playoffs every year.
Yeah.
Right. And that could happen because it's like there was a foundation there and just couldn't finish the deal. So I don't know. I think they'll have to make a decision. Like, I don't see him getting much more rope than this year. Do you?
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but
yeah. I mean, I would say that depending on this offseason, depending on how the next season goes, that could very well be as long as that leash is.
Yep. And that might factor into his decision making of who to go after too, right?
Yeah, totally.
And it comes down to also kind of like what you said, Michael, too. I mean, it's not, we probably would want almost every single player that's in free agency, and we would like to trade for the Jack Eichels and the players that we missed out on. Someone brought up Sean Monahan and how Montreal took advantage of getting 2 first-round picks just for getting him and then trading him away again. So, I mean, you got to look at it from that perspective where Steve Yzerman, he can only deal with the hand that he's dealt with, too, right? I mean, you've fallen back in draft. You can only do so much in free agency and so much with trades. So, I mean, that kind of plays a part of it, too, right? So
a little bit, but I
think
think you've got to make your own luck a little bit, and that's what's gonna.
True.
You know, it's a performance job in the end, and I think everybody's smart enough to see. Okay, the cupboard was kind of bare. You rebuilt it from scratch. There's a long-term foundation, but just like coaches, you can change someone if they don't get you over the hump, and then the next guy does. Because it's like someone will go in and go, "Oh my god, this is great! I got all these assets. I'm going to trade a few of them, and get the guys I need."
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to, this guy's never going to be what this guy is. So I win and they're in the playoffs. And that's kind of where they're probably at,
Do coaches and GMs typically in off seasons, do you think maybe that's what Tom McClellan and Steve Yzerman are doing currently right now? Because we haven't heard from them in their press conferences yet. Do you think maybe they're having deep conversations about how to make this team better?
For sure they have.
Well, I mean, the Holinka's on, right? Or the under 18s are on in Dallas right now. So I imagine they're there. I haven't been watching it. Actually, apparently they've been having really bad attendance. I feel bad about that. But I'm sure they're watching that because that's another group of young talent that's going to, a bunch of guys that are draftable are going to be in that. So I'm sure there's that. And then for sure, they've done exit interviews. They're trying to think of, okay, like, how do we get over the hump? And are we at that point where it's not going to damage us if we move some prospects? And I'm sure they're having those conversations. And how did the coaching staff do? I think they're going to change some guys. It sounds like, I don't know who that is. Hopefully it's not Jay. Hopefully Jay's still there. That'd be good. But
just the goaltending change so far.
The goaltending coach, right?
Yeah. Yep. That so far.
I don't know. I just see rumors that you guys see. So
yeah.
I don't know if you have one final question, maybe a couple more, Carlo.
No. I think this was awesome. This was great. But no, to answer your question, they have to be addressing it. But no, I was just going to get into wrapping it up. And again, Michael Devellano giving us a real generous amount of time. We thank you. Claps for Michael once again at Pucks and Dreams _ on Twitter.
I think it's _.
Loves talking shop. We love talking shop. So, drop us some comments, drop us some lines. We'll definitely get him back in touch with Michael. If you have anything direct for him, obviously go and follow him. But, we love the engagement and we want to keep things rolling. And Michael, we'd love to have you back on, man, as the offseason kind of comes and goes. We'd love to get you back on as we approach next season to see how offside we were today or how onside we were today.
Find out. I don't know.
I don't know.
I feel like I was as conservative as Stevie Yzerman, but I'm just like really watching. Watching how he makes decisions. You're like, I don't know if he's going to go crazy, but we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll have you back on, Michael.
All right, boys,
don't you worry.
All right, man. Thanks for everything. See ya.
Carlo, Michael had to drop out early, and that's okay. This was a pretty long episode. It was a fantastic episode, though. I thought he gave us a lot of groundwork. I think it's going to open a lot of eyes to some fans. At least we think that they're fans, the ones who have been the naysayers so far, especially online, that everything should be okay. I don't know if you have any thoughts real quick, maybe on something that Michael may have touched on, but I overall, I thought that was fantastic from him and what he offered to us and the fans alike.
Yeah, I mean, look, the whole point of the episode with the Holland versus Yzerman, it's like, Yzerman came in and he's done, I hope everybody remembers what he's done since 2019. I mean, we can take you right back to trading Mantha and Hronek to get picks and prospects. I mean, that was a pretty aggressive move. I don't think anybody saw that one coming. But he did that to really fast track stocking the cupboard. Now he's stocked the cupboard. And personally, for me, like my expectation of Steve Yzerman is, now's the time, like we talked about it with Michael, like now's the time to really start injecting some splashes, maybe some, it doesn't have to be the greatest, biggest fish in the sea like a Marner, but there needs to be some very, hits. There needs to be some hits that come in and get injected. And now's the perfect time. I laid it out before with Kopp and Comfort's contract being 50% over. Now's the time to do it. We talked a lot about the idea of injecting more youth, but more youth needs talent to play for. Recapping, like prime example is Jonathan Bergeron, man. Like, what's he doing with Tyler Mott? What's he doing with Michael Rasmussen? He's not producing. And then all of a sudden, McClellan throws him onto the top line, and he's producing. So that tells me that there needs to be some fish signed, and now's the time to do it. It's the perfect time to do it. The cap's jumping up. You got contracts that are now getting over the 50% hump that are on this team that are going to be falling off the books. Now's the time to re-inject some free agents or make some creative trades like you did with the Mantha and the Hroneks. now's the time to do that, to really, that's what's going to get this team over the hump, Zach. So
yeah,
that's kind of my wrap up of it. You know, we talked a lot about different strategies and different ideas and a lot of hypotheticals of what it could look like. But, you know, one thing that Michael's take was that I found very interesting was that how much more rope does Yzerman get?
Yeah.
Because his name is Yzerman. You know, there's a line that you have to kind of respect. And it's the fact that, yeah, your last name's Yzerman. You're going to have as much leash as you can, but at what cost? And at this point, it's coming at the cost of continuous no playoffs. I mean, you got Buffalo, longest playoff drought, and you got Detroit, and that needs to end. I think now's the opportunity for Yzerman to change his vision a little bit, change his outlook, change his attitude on what he's trying to do, because we can't keep doing the same thing. We're just going to be spinning wheels. So, you know, we talked a lot about that to get to this conclusion. That's where I'm at. What do you got, man? What's your thoughts, final thoughts? I guess this is final thoughts segment. Really is what it is.
Yeah, we'll claim this as the final thoughts segment. Yeah, I would say that one primarily stick the most to me. You know, I'm not someone who, I actually will say this. I said this in person with family at Easter, and maybe I said this to other people too, that I kind of want to believe that Steve Yzerman has as long as he wants until he wants to leave. And I think he is someone who is smart enough to realize when it is time to leave. I don't think he's a schmuck in that regard to just stick around until he's fired, right? I think he's much smarter than that.
Yeah.
To me personally, yeah, I mean, I would have to say that this is the perfect offseason to do it. My only thing is that, you know, I look at some of these players and it's talking about like the cops and the comfers, right? It's that you realistically told them probably when you signed them, we're bringing you as the 2C. We want you to play top 6. This is kind of the envision. I don't know exactly how further that went. But to me, I don't see a world where you're going into free agency, bringing in, let's say, either a Marner or an Ehlers, someone who plays in that top 6, and then you're telling these guys, okay, you absolutely have to start going down until you start proving it to me. And I think that with players in that regard, that kind of gets on their nerve a little bit. And so maybe we see a point where JT Compher's, Steve Yzerman goes in and says, you're either the third line winger or you're the 4C. And I don't see a player like that, to be honest with you, that's going to be too thrilled about that. So to your point, I agree with you where we have to make the bottom 6 better, but I don't think it's by pushing players down. I think it's by getting the players and not spending the $14 million or however much it is. And we just get those players who are perfect fits for the players that we currently have on this team, and that are perfect fits for third or fourth line roles, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. As much as I want a Marner, an Ehlers, or a Gavrikov, like I said.
Let me ask you a question. You're JT Compher.
Yeah.
So you're saying JT Compher's probably not going to be thrilled at the idea of playing third wing or fourth center.
On the Detroit Red Wings, no. But if you said, do you want to go back to Colorado? They have a spot for 3C or on the third line wing. Would you be willing to accept a trade to there?
So he's probably going to say yes. But what if you position it as, hey, JT, listen, in order for us to move past this hump and be a playoff team, you know, maybe JT loves playing in Detroit, which I think he does.
Yeah, absolutely.
But maybe it requires JT playing on 3 wing or 4C to get over that hump to make room for a true whatever 3C or 4C. And that's maybe the position you got to look at it too. I mean, who knows? We're just talking shop, dude. Like nobody really knows, but you know, I think that the players would rather play hockey right now and play postseason hockey than worry about where they are in the lineup, because sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and understand that I'm not a 3C. Not when these guys are here, right?
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, I mean, look at what Dylan Larkin, 4 Nations, perfect example, right? Didn't he start off as like the 4th C or something like that, or like on the wing or something, and then he had to showcase and prove himself. I mean, JT Compher and Andrew Kopp, they technically both have to do that this next season too, because much like Michael said, Kasper's already passed them both.
Oh yeah,
he's officially the 2C, or he's the left top wing for this team, right? If it's not Soda or Jan Teberger and whoever else you want to put up there. But I still stand by what I said. I think that these younger players that we added last season can contribute more next season than what they did this season. And so that's kind of why I lean towards not spending a bunch of money, even if it's anywhere from 6 up. If you have to, go ahead. But yeah, I'm okay with just adding the bottom 6 guys, even the bottom pair guys on defense. I'm okay with that, for allowing young guys to get more time to showcase that they can do more, much like a Jonathan Berggren, to your point. Like, he can't do that with a Tyler Mott and Austin Watson.
No.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it, which is fine. It's okay that we just are not disagree, that we have two completely different opinions, points, and like that's
two
okay.
Different, 100%.
You know, that's part of it. That's
because they both could be the one that, which we're both going to be happy about anyways, whether it's your opinion, my opinion, someone else's opinion. At the end of the day, we all want the same end goal. So whatever gets us there, we're going to be thrilled about. We're just putting it all into existence, talking about everything, throwing a bunch of things at the wall, because, you know, I truly think now's the time to be throwing a bunch of things at the wall to determine what plan makes the most sense and which one unlocks, you know, getting over this hump. And there is no right answer. There's probably multiple right answers. We will find out. But yeah, that was a fun one, dude. That was a fun one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is where we can wrap it up for now, Carlo. And so let's take the second to say thanks for stopping by on this brand new episode. Once again, if you are returning, if you are brand new, thanks for stopping by. If you haven't already, if you're watching or listening to this on YouTube, I always want to say viewing after that, so I apologize. But watching and viewing is the same thing. If you guys didn't know that, you learned something new today. But if you're doing that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, hit that follow button as well, or the notification bell. That's what it is on YouTube. But yeah, hit that follow button on Apple and Spotify as well. The thumbs up, rate us 5 stars. Go follow Michael at Pucks and Dreams. We'll highlight that everywhere on this episode and all the descriptions.
He's a great follow. Lots of content there, and lots of smart takes and methodical. Lots of thinking, I think, goes into it. And that was a lot of fun, man. Thanks, Michael. Thanks again, man. That was great.
Yeah, we'll have him on again soon enough here. Maybe right before the season starts, who knows? But with that being said, Carlo, let's wrap it up. And until next time, we'll see y'all on the next one. See you.
See you guys.
Later.